Well, hello. How are you? I'm fine. Great, actually. Thank you. I'm really well. Everything's great. I'm fine. So, I know that was a bit of a weird start, but welcome to this week's episode about the trauma response of Fawn. That's Fawn, and being too darn nice, or just a little bit passive-aggressive, and definitely not authentic. So I don't know about you, but the culture I was brought up in contains an element of being nice, which also encouraged having no boundaries. So we like to constantly pretend that everything is fine, and it's important to us to consistently be as nice as possible to other human beings, including when we don't mean it. Now, I'm exaggerating by saying always, but there's this deep enculturation, if you like, of being nice and presenting a good face, and also not challenging other people, and especially not saying no. Okay, so before we go any further, please do me the honor of subscribing to this YouTube channel. So just click the red subscribe button below. And if you find this video useful, please do let me know about how it touched you, for example, and drop a comment in below. All right, let's do this. Let's go deep. So, at a deeper level, in the work of complex PTSD specialist Peter Walker, Fawn is seen as the fourth trauma pattern to accompany the other survival patterns of fight, flight, and freeze. Now, these are very necessary survival patterns. For example, throughout our evolution, when we are attacked, it's pretty useful to be ready to fight. And so adrenaline and cortisol pour through our bodies, glucose moves to our muscles, and we're ready for action. Or when I'm traumatized, I flee or withdraw. Or when fighting or fleeing don't work, it can be just the right survival mechanism or response to freeze or become kind of paralyzed or immobilized. And so the fourth survival strategy, all right, we started with fight, flight, and freeze. The fourth one from the CTPTSD model is called Fawn. The things to look for here are constantly being nice, or apologizing a lot, even when it's not your own fault, or lacking boundaries, and lacking the ability to voice your self-protection, or have a bit of a growl, or the ability to say, back off, or even the most ultimately important, no. I don't like that, or no, don't do that. If some of these sound familiar, then Fawn might be your thing, or at least a part of your story. It's certainly a part of mine. So here's the thing. These survival strategies are essential, but us humans can get stuck in them, always reacting to the world as if we are under attack or our survival is threatened. And then we react to the world through these stuck trauma patterns or responses, always fighting or always fleeing or fawning or obsequious. For myself and many of my clients, it's a great discovery process, reading some of the trauma literature on it. On this subject, please do read Peter Walker's CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. So, as I've said, in trauma typology, there are four responses to threat. These are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And you could call these trauma responses. And for people who receive what they call a good enough parenting, and just to affirm that there's no such thing as perfect parenting, but we're all trying our best here. So for anyone who received good enough parenting, they'll have a healthy balance of all of these four responses. But if you suffered very specific traumas, it may lead you to be stuck or fixated in a specific dominant survival strategy from one of those four. And you do this to get by and survive. So you might have a subtle but deeply embedded pattern of fleeing relationships or withdrawing when hurt as a survival strategy at home, because that's what you needed to do when you were littler. But a healthy upbringing will allow for all four of these responses to come into play as you need them. So ideally we have balanced access to, for example, fight, which allows us to have solid boundaries, a healthy assertiveness, and even aggressive self-protection when necessary. Fantastic. I love that. I want to be able to say no when I need to, with vigor, kindness, but firmness, and in the moment when it's needed to be said. And a healthy flight response allows us to leave a dangerous situation, disengage and retreat when necessary. This is obviously a very useful survival response to have with overtly dangerous situations, and when even emotionally dangerous events are taking place and it's time to get out of there or disengage. Sometimes it's just best to back off or back away and avoid fighting. And a healthy freeze response allows us to stop struggling in the moment, give up, and allows us to become still and sometimes even pain-free in that moment if our body floods with the right chemicals, which it sometimes does with a freeze response. From this place, we can assess danger and see what's going on from almost a removed point of view, instead of being consumed by it in rage or in fear. So a healthy freeze response can get us to recognize when fighting or fleeing is futile and could make the situation worse. So too with a healthy version of the fawn response. A healthy version is that in conflict or danger, we socially engage, we listen to others, we help, and we compromise in difficult situations. So some healthy characteristics can include loving service, compromising, listening, fairness, and peacemaking. But the downsides, unfortunately, include codependence, obsequiousness, servitude, groveling, and a loss of self. And at worst, the fawn might be a people-pleasing doormat or a slave with what's called social perfectionism. And one of the archetypes of the fawn is the parentized child. In other words, when a child has been enlisted as an ally, friend, servant, or confidant to the parent and has to act like a parent with their own parent, it can lead to the fawn archetype becoming dominant in that person. So while all of these 4 Fs are necessary survival strategies, when they're at the level of trauma, they can dominate our relationships as an attachment disorder. And they're also often complemented by an ambivalence about relationships. I want to be in one, but I'm also really terrified of being in it. And the truth is, relationships trigger the past in us. And that's why they essentially often trigger our developmental wounding. So these 4 Fs will express themselves in the present in our relationships. So that wounding from our past will come flooding through in a moment of, for example, freezing terror or the urge to run or a deep level of fury and fight. And you'll scream at your partner or you'll be filled with the need to flatter and recruit the other person, totally giving up on your own needs. And in the CPTSD literature, when you get flooded with these emotions, it's called an emotional flashback. In other words, that you are re-experiencing in the moment, right now, the same emotions that you had back then at the time of your original trauma. Let's take a deep breath. And the feelings come flooding back. They come flooding through into your body just as if you were right back there. And it's completely beyond our control at that time. It takes over and just happens to us. So for fawn types, these people pleasers essentially learn to be very sensitive to and meet the needs, wishes, and agendas of others. Firstly, of parents, then in relationships for the rest of their lives. In other words, for me to be safe, I need to give up on my needs, boundaries, and preferences. Why have preferences when you can just please everyone else? So being helpful, listening, and available, and affirming the other can make me safe and possibly loved. Fawn often involves at least one narcissistic or borderline narcissistic parent. In other words, a parent who unconsciously wants exclusive or an inappropriately close relationship with the child. Or an inappropriately close relationship with a child, or in some way that the child should meet their needs. So the child can become parentized and learns to take care of the needs of the parent in some shape or form. And the parent can act actually like a needy child and may manipulate the child and may even involve tantrums when their needs aren't met. So the child can be turned into the parent's bestie or confidant or house servant or even a substitute partner, or in the worst cases, a substitute lover. And it may include being forced into parenting other children within the family too. And this child may also develop a court jester role in the family too, to keep the family member or all the members happy. It's a way of keeping the peace. So, really just to affirm, you may resonate with some of this, but not all of it. There's a spectrum of responses of this, and you may have a hybrid of these responses lurking inside. So, how do we recover from the fawn response and being inauthentically nice? So, good question. I'm glad you asked. Firstly, we can definitely recover from this kind of trauma, but it requires some work. One of the patterns to look out for is if you've developed a pattern of being endlessly available to listen, but blocked from interjecting or speaking yourself. Here we learn verbal assertiveness and learn to unblock our voices. I do a lot of work with my clients on unblocking their voices, learning to express boundaries, and then developing powerful voices, as opposed to sitting there very quietly, just absorbing and being available to the other. And developing powerful, real, authentic boundaries can be the work of a lifetime, but it starts today, right now. Can you please comment on this blog? Say hi in the comments section below. And of course, if you don't want to, just say no really loudly right now. No. No. Practice your no. It's really satisfying. Just say no. And for some, just the thought of saying no can be incredibly frightening and even trigger an emotional flashback for someone who carries the fawn-style PTSD. So if you want to explore more about boundaries, I did another YouTube episode specifically about the topic. There'll be a link below and at the end about this. Go there for more specific ways of practicing your boundaries. And at a deeper level, it requires consistent therapeutic work to heal and meet our trauma. For this kind of fawn-related trauma, we need to access the hurt and also the shut it down response from the original trauma. So we access the hurt, but we also access the part of us that closes down. You could call them manager parts that have developed the response of, I need to stay quiet to keep us safe. And I think this often goes for people who have freeze and fawn-related trauma, is they often have shut down their rage. The anger is in there somewhere, but it just cycles around, boiling down below the surface without necessarily being expressed, and it self-poisons us. And though it might be a huge amount of shame about carrying this rage in the body, like we're actually not allowed to have it. Like there's something wrong with me if I'm angry like this. And so one of the most powerful things that one can do is access that fire, access the rage, and really allow it to come forward. Because for us, that's partly where our shut down voice finds the power to come forward. Now, this is not the story of those who have got a really strongly embedded fight archetype. They know all about how to get that voice out and shout it out. And you might be a hybrid voice that mostly is fawn, but then when you get really pushed, finally the fight comes out, and you'll stay bottled, then bam, out comes that voice. None of us is exactly one thing, but there's a lot of pointers here for those of us with a fawn archetype. And so accessing that rage is also where our powerful, authentic boundaries come from. And as mentioned in another episode, it can help to keep a resentment diary. So, in other words, noticing when there's resentment and anger hiding in the body. Journal about it. Resentment is one of the great signals that, one, I'm angry with someone. So if you're feeling resentment and there's an inner dialogue going on about your partner or your mother or about your father or about a friend or a business partner, that will tell you, one, just stop. I'm angry with someone. Two, I haven't expressed it. Three, there's potentially a boundary I am not expressing or haven't expressed. So when I'm resenting somebody else, it can mean that there's something I'm not communicating to them. In other words, something that I'm holding on to. And so when we keep a resentment diary and journal about it, it really helps develop consciousness around when we're not expressing anger in the moment. And yes, there is healthy anger, and it's important to learn to express it. It's a great part of my journey. And it will tell us, this anger, what boundaries we really need. And I can't emphasize this enough. If resentment is circling around your body, learn to speak your boundaries. They are essential for relationship health and feeling safe in the world. In some senses, and Brené Brown expresses this, I can't remember the quote, but for us to truly develop love and compassion, we have to have boundaries. And so nice pretends compassion and connectedness, but actually it's an expression of I'm not safe. And until we learn boundaries that keep us safe, we can't be truly compassionate and truly loving and connected. Phew. Let's take another deep breath. Yeah. As I said, I know this stuff from the inside. This is a huge area of learning for me and not my strong suit. And so with boundaries, it's a great idea to start rehearsing what you would say powerfully by yourself. Walk around a quiet space at home and practice saying it firmly but kindly. Practice it until it becomes natural, and ultimately we hope that at some point it'll just pop out and you'll start speaking your boundaries in the moment. There's a lot more to be said on the subject. I think that's it for now. And this is an introduction, so if you recognize a bit of fawn and pleasing, then you might want to go deeper and work through this. And part of this is liberating your voice. I hope you enjoyed this and connected with it. Let me know in the comments below how it landed. Also, here are a few more videos for you to watch on related subjects. Take care. I hope you get to be a little bit less nice today and a little bit more authentic. It's a curious life.